But the truth is, one of the most important aspects of my recovery was anger, and actually outrage. And so I think I can't speak enough about the importance of us to get angry. All of the ways we're taught to distance ourselves from our bodies, to view our bodies as object, to take our bodies up as a project. I'm pissed about that. I'm pissed about the people that get money or make money off of my insecurity and my dissatisfaction. Like, that anger was fuel for me to not accept that and to not accept the current system as something that I was just going to continue to play in. So anger was a super important aspect of that. And, I feel like fury is necessary.
Hey everyone, I'm Thais Sky. Welcome to Reclaim, a podcast for women by women on conversations that matter. Hello everybody, Thais Sky here. Welcome to Reclaim the podcast, where we have conversations that matter. I am your host, Thais Sky, a little out of breath here. I just finished recording an amazing episode with Carmen Cool that I cannot wait to share with you. This interview is so good. You can just tell how much I love Carmen, how much I love the work that she does. And so that's coming up in literally just 2 seconds in this episode. But before we bring Carmen on, I just have a couple comments and a couple things. I want to answer a listener question. First off, this will be our second to last episode of season 2. So next week will be the last episode of season 2. I've really enjoyed season 2 of Reclaim. We've gone through quite the journey together. I've interviewed some ridiculously amazing humans. I've also started this whole new chapter of Reclaim of answering listener questions. Then that has been such a joy. So I'm going to continue doing that in season 3. And so if you need 6 weeks to catch up on all things Reclaim, well, the good news is that's exactly what you're getting. Season 2, once season 2 ends, there's going to be about a 6-week hiatus. I'm going to be celebrating my 30th birthday in Brazil with my partner. I'm going to be ending the 5th quarter of my master's program. There's just a lot going on during these 6 weeks. And then I will be back for season 3 of Reclaim. So that is something you have to look forward to. But I do have a listener question that I want to get to. So let me pull up the question right now. Okay, here we go. Hi, Thais and the Reclaim team. Since I started listening to the podcast in February 2018, I have transformed my life in some very profound ways, and I can't thank you enough for creating this quality content. For me, this journey has included seeking out a suitable and compatible psychologist who supports me wholeheartedly, and I'm very grateful for that. Thank you again. I have been pondering a good question or topic I would like to hear more about on Reclaim, and this came to mind. One of the persistent themes that comes up for me in therapy and other healing modalities is my resistance to receiving love and care from others. This is coupled with a tendency to empty my cup by selflessly giving to others wholeheartedly, and when feeling down, being heartbroken or a little resentful of others when they put themselves first. I can identify my obligation to self-sacrifice, but I'm unsure how to notice and appreciate others' love when it doesn't come in the form of my dominant love language, I guess. It's a hard pattern to break, and I was wondering if you might have some suggestions for strategies to sit in a new feeling of receiving love openly, aside from just cultivating an attitude of gratitude. Thanks in advance. And this is from I Want the Love. All right, I Want the Love. I have many thoughts for you. Thank you so much for emailing me this question. For all of you listening, please continue to email me. You can private message me on Instagram or on Facebook, a question that you have that you want answered on Reclaim. The link is in the show notes. You can also just email me at info@ThaisSky. Questions like these, it just helps everybody, because I know that there are people listening who have been feeling this exact same way. And while I never would have, off the top of my mind, most likely, answered this, talked about this very thing on Reclaim, now I have an opportunity to answer this question, and I have many thoughts around it. So again, if you have a question and you want me to answer, just go to show notes or go to info@thaissky.com. That's my email. Okay. All right. So I want the love. Let me start with this. First thing that you mentioned here in your question is this idea of love languages. Now, if you're listening and you've been living under a rock and you don't know what love languages are, it's this book that became very popular. It's a very pop psych book that talks about 5 different ways that most people receive love. And like we typically go for one of these 5 things, sometimes 2 of these 5 things. And they are words of affirmation, quality time, gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. What's interesting about love languages is that it changes. Different partners bring out different love languages within us. And I love that. I love about love languages that it's flexible. It's just a structured way that I guess we can see and think about how we receive and give love. So while I like the idea of love languages, I think it also can be very overly simplified. And so I want to be careful when using tools like love languages that we're not trying to apply it in all the different things. That's just my little caveat there. But if you want to learn more about love languages, you can just Google love languages and the book will come up. There's the website. You could take an online quiz that will tell you your top love, it ranks them in terms of your preferences, all those good things. Okay, so I just thought I would break that down for anybody who was not familiar with what a love language is. Now, I want the love you share that this is coupled. Your resistance to love is coupled with a tendency to empty your cup by being selfless to others. I love that you said coupled, because what I'm hearing here is that there's a pattern, that these things are actually related. It's not that on the one hand, you have a hard time receiving love, and on the other hand, you tend to give a lot of love, and those are 2 separate things. They actually are one and the same. And I think what's happening here, at least what I think happens to me when I have a hard time receiving love, is that when we give love, we tend to feel a sense of control. When we give love, we can control what you allow in. You can control how much you give. It gives you the semblance of control. And I think when it comes to something like love, care, attention, intention, quality time, like when we're talking about these ways that love is expressed, it makes sense that it can feel really, really scary. Particularly if we were shown in childhood that love sometimes came with baggage, love was complicated, which I think is most of us. Then I think we grow up continuing to have kind of a complicated relationship with love. And so we find when we were kids that if we do things for other people, then we're kind of like more assured love, like people like us more. And so that's like a form of control. It's a way that we try to manipulate other people, that if we give, then somehow in that giving, they will give to us. Right. And then, of course, that then gets us resentful when we give and turns out that they actually are not giving to us. They're prioritizing themselves. We feel resentful because we wish we could do that ourselves. And we gave because we hoped that somehow it would come back to us. And the fact that it's not coming back to us makes us really upset. Right. So I want the love that you really connected the 2, because I do think that the 2 are interconnected. And what I'm sensing is that there's an underlying sense of needing to control. And I use the word control with a lot of love and tenderness. And I know that the words like control and manipulation can sound very negative. That's not the way that I'm intending them. It's just kind of naming what is happening. Even though we have the best intentions, ultimately when we're giving because we kind of want something back, that's a little manipulative, right? And even though it's unconscious, if that's what's happening, then that's what's happening. And the more that we can be tender to ourselves, that this is how we learned how to love, or this is how we learned that we could be assured an attachment, then we don't have to spiral in inadequacy because we're doing that. We can just name, oh, okay, yeah, this is how I have been trying to control the situation, and now I'm going to do something different about it, or I'm going to tend to the wound that, is feeling really overwhelming with your therapist or with your coach or whomever you're working with, okay? So it sounds like, when we do this, when we have a hard time receiving, well, it's a way that we are now having to be exposed to our vulnerability, which is exactly what we're trying to not expose by being in control, right? Giving is a way of being in control, and receiving, well, that feels really terrifying, because when we're receiving, we're opening up our heart, and that can feel very scary. That can feel out of control. So what I'm really hearing in this question is actually a conversation about intimacy. It doesn't sound like it's really about love. It's like a willingness to be intimate and vulnerable and exposed and seen by somebody. It's a fear of a genuine connection is what I'm hearing typically when women come to me saying that they feel like they have a hard time receiving. And a fear of genuine connection, a fear of being seen is very valid when we were not really attuned to when we were younger. And we feel like being seen comes with criticism, or it comes with a price tag, right? It comes with certain caveats, or it comes with certain, what am I trying to say? Yeah, with certain premises, right? It's not unconditional. And so if we now look at this as a conversation about intimacy, then we can recognize that giving yourself endlessly, emptying your cup selflessly by giving to others is actually not a way of being intimate. It's actually sometimes a way that we keep things out. Giving to that extent is a way that sometimes that like we prevent things from coming in. Do we see how that can be? It's like when you give, then you're not really being in the relationship with the person. You're trying to be in control of the person. So you're diminishing intimacy there. So recognizing and being with what is the fear of genuine connection, what are you afraid of will happen by receiving love, what's going to happen, what are you afraid is going to be exposed, may be helpful for you. Okay. I always believe that the best strategy to kind of navigate these kind of questions is to go deeper. What if it's something deeper than just having it be hard to receive love? Like, what if there was something more? That awareness that we can develop of like, okay, if it's not just about receiving love, if it's actually about intimacy and about fear of connection, then what could that be? I think that self-awareness then allows us to receive love. I think that awareness can really change things. But I also want to give you a strategy, something to be thinking about that you can be doing in your day-to-day life that addresses this head on. And it's something that I kind of recommend often. And it's this idea of when you are receiving love, whether it's your love language or not, whether it's a way that you expect it or not, see if you can breathe it in and name it instead of reacting and pushing away. So what I'm inviting you to do here is to slow down. If you notice yourself if you're being given a compliment or someone is doing something for you and you're feeling the compulsion to want to push it away, right? You're feeling your desire to close it down. See if you can allow yourself some curiosity into what you're feeling physically. What emotions are coming up? What are the beliefs that are coming up? See if you can be in that for even just 30 seconds instead of reacting and actually pushing away. If someone compliments you, see if you can really breathe it in and allow it and then just say thank you. And notice the discomfort, be with the discomfort, but then get curious, what's the discomfort about? What's underneath here? Yeah? See if you can hold space between the action and the reaction where you can deepen into what's happening in that moment that you're feeling like you can't receive love. Okay, so that's my answer for you. I want the love. I hope that supports you. And again, if any of you have any questions, even follow-up questions to this, or whatever you want, email me, message me on Facebook or on Instagram. I love this stuff, and I hope that it supports you as well. Okay, now it's time to bring on Carmen Cool. So Carmen is someone that I've met online through the internet, and I just really, really resonate with her amazing work on what it means to navigate health at every size, what it means to feel happy without disordered eating. What does it mean to feel good in your body? So this is her official bio. Carmen Cool is a radical therapist, educator, activist, and cupcake connoisseur. She has been a weight-inclusive therapist for 19 years, helping people heal their relationships with food and their bodies. She's also started and run a nonprofit, created youth programs, and speaks internationally at Health at Every Size weight on health at every size, weight stigma, and eating disorder prevention. Her work is focused on dismantling diet culture, bridging activism and therapy, and supporting the next generation of body liberation leaders. She is in the past, she's been the board president of the Association for Size Diversity in Health. She was named Most Inspiring Individual in Boulder, Colorado, and was the recipient of the Excellence in Eating Disorder Advocacy Award in Washington, D.C. So you can learn more about her at carmencool.com. I love this conversation with her. And while we're talking about, health at every size, eating disorder, and what does it mean to liberate ourselves from diet culture, I would love for you to be thinking about your own relationship with food. What does it mean for you to feel healthy? What does it mean for you to be in tune with your body? What would it look like for you if you are, in the trenches of disordered eating, or in the trenches of, continuing still, what am I trying to say? If you are in a place where even on some level you still believe that when you lose the weight, then you'll be happy, I want you to notice that part of you and tend to it and see what's there. I hope you enjoy. Hello, Carmen. Welcome to Reclaim the Podcast. I'm so honored that you're here with me today.
I am delighted. I was going to say joyous. Maybe both are true.
Both
just
are
delighted
true.
that you asked me here, and I love the opportunity just to be in conversation and connection with you. So thank you.
Well,
for the invitation.
Yeah, I love the work that you do in the world. I love the advocacy work you do, the way that you share your thoughts online about the work that you do around health at every size. I mean, you are a therapist for, well, I don't know if necessarily only for people with eating disorders, but I know that is part of the population that you work with. And I just really, really, as someone who has come from a background of disordered eating, some would categorize it as an eating disorder. I don't know. I didn't go to a mental health professional at that time. So I don't know. But having gone through my journey of eating, I just so appreciate people like you who are really taking a stand for us, and I would love to know a little bit for those of the people who are listening who may not know much about you. I would love for you to share your own thoughts around who you are, the work you do in the world, what brought you to this place, whatever you want to share.
Sure. That could take up a whole bunch of time, actually. And I love the question that you asked, share my thoughts about who I am, because my thoughts about who I am change all the time. So I think I'll start with a story, which is the memory that I have of the first time I can recall not feeling okay about my body. And what I remember about it is that I was 10 years old. And it was the time after Thanksgiving where all of the women in particular gathered in the kitchen after the big meal, right? So we had my mom and my grandmother and my aunts and my cousins, and everyone was hanging out in the kitchen. And it was the first year we had the electric carving knife, which for whatever reason I thought was the greatest invention ever. I thought it was just like, instead of my dad's or whoever struggling with the knife to cut the turkey, you just turned it in and plugged it on, and it just easily sliced through the turkey. And I remember grabbing my young belly into my hands, and I said, I wish I could slice this off the way we just sliced through the turkey. And when I look back on that moment, I think, wow, there was a perfect moment for an intervention. If someone had really heard me and heard the feelings I was starting to have about myself that I didn't recognize, it might have changed a whole bunch of things about my life. But what I remember is that everybody joined in the conversation with some version of, me too. That would be great. I would love to do that to this part of my arms or this part of my legs, or wouldn't that be great if only we could be able to do that? And I look back and I think, there's probably a few things I took away from that moment. And one was that everybody hated their bodies because everybody so quickly joined into that conversation, resonance. And the other thing I think I took was there really something was wrong with my belly because nobody came in defense of it, or nobody contradicted my statement. And the third thing was something about how fast community forms around self-hatred, right? That it was this instant moment of bonding. And while I wouldn't have known this then, I think it formed the seed of a question I would later ask, which is, if we could form community so fast around body hatred, is it possible for us to also form community around a shared different experience of body liberation and really feeling and reclaiming our right to feel okay in our bodies just as they are? So that's an early story. And then I'll fast forward a little bit into both my sister and I had eating disorders growing up. And my sister actually died from anorexia about 13 years ago. But what I'll say is that while she might have died of anorexia, I really believe weight stigma is what killed her. And so when I went back to school, I went into recovery from bulimia and binge eating disorder. And by the time I went back to school to be a therapist, I knew that my work was going to live at this intersection of eating disorders and weight stigma. And that's where I went, right? And so I just kind of landed there. The professionals that I was really lucky enough to get some help and support and treatment from were active in the fat liberation movement. And so I think professionally from the very beginning, I got mentored by some really fierce and loving folks around this issue.
Yeah, I think that it's something that I don't know if a lot of people know is the high mortality rate in people who have eating disorders, and how something like the conversation we're having about body liberation, fat phobia, it's such an important conversation to have, but it's also a life-saving conversation to have. And that people literally have their lives saved by these conversations. Does that make, it's like, it's so much more than just a conversation. And I think that's so important for people to know that that's how insidious our fat phobic society has into our psyche, that the fear of being fat kills us.
Yep, I was just about to say what you just said. So thank you for saying that. It's not just eating disorders that kill us, right? Or that people die from eating disorders, but people die from oppression.
Yes.
Right? That's actually what's making people's lives hard, is this system that privileges some bodies over others or some lives over others.
Yeah.
All of those systems that use the body as, actually over this weekend, just heard Sonia Renee talk about the way bodies are used as currency and as a system of reinforcing hierarchy. That's deadly.
Yeah. And I have worked with women who have shared with me how, their families have nitpicked at their bodies since as far as they can remember. And so, together we do that work of seeing, well, then it's no wonder that we nitpick ourselves.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear a little bit about your understanding of that connection, and how can we dismantle something that is so embedded in who we are because it's been happening since as far as we can remember.
Yeah. And actually, I would say it's not embedded in who we are. It's embedded in the culture we live in. And so that feels like an important distinction to make, that I don't want to locate the problem inside of us as individuals, because it belongs out into the systems. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But your question around, oh gosh, so many things are going through my head at once. The connection around people commenting on our bodies and being critical of our bodies, and then the way we learn to be critical of ourselves. Is that one of the, and then the giant question of how do we start to dismantle it?
Yeah.
Just small questions you're asking here.
I like to keep Reclaim really light and fluffy.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's why I'm drawn to it. Yeah. No, I love these, the deeper layers and the nuances of these conversations. I think I kind of want to take the second part first, actually, the part around how to dismantle, because I think that's the critical question. And I can't claim to have all of the answers around it for sure. But I feel like two things come up to me or for me as important. Actually, someone asked me one day what the most important factor in my recovery was. And I remember that I wanted the answer to be something fluffy, right? Not fluffy. Actually, I take that back. I wanted something to be like love and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not fluffy. So that's not how I meant to start. But I wanted it to be love or compassion or kindness, right? But the truth is, one of the most important aspects of my recovery was anger, and actually outrage. And so I think I can't speak enough about the importance of us to get angry
Mm-hmm.
at all of the ways we're taught to distance ourselves from our bodies,
Mm-hmm.
to view our bodies as object, to take our bodies up as a project. I'm pissed about that. I'm pissed about the
Mm-hmm.
people that get money or make money off of my insecurity and my dissatisfaction. I'm pissed at any system that tells me the hips that I have are not okay, or that my body needs to be something else in order to be deemed more worthy and more lovable. Like, that anger was fuel for me. It was fuel for me to not accept that, and to not accept the current system as something that I was just going to continue to play in. Does that make sense?
It does make
Um,
sense.
so anger was a super important aspect of that. And I'm trying to think what the other thing was I was going to say. Maybe it'll come back to me in a second. Um, I feel like fury is necessary, right? That anger is such an immediate source of information and wisdom about something going on in our lives that needs to stop. That something about the prescriptions and patriarchal demands about how our bodies are supposed to be, and the energy that we spend trying to count calories or perfect our bodies or hating ourselves, the anger, that energy that could get the energy that could get poured back into the world and creating the changes that need to get changed, like, that's what I'm into, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like to be angry is an act of self-definition. Um, it pushes back on the messages that tell us that we're not allowed to be angry. It's where we feel our edges and our boundaries. And I love a good fight, right? To be clear, outrage propels me into activism. And activism shows me where I can act and take part in reshaping the culture and to feel my own agency, right? That I'm not just a passive recipient of toxic messages, but I can actually begin to heal in ways that let my actions become an extension of my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I also feel like I get angry precisely because I love, which kind of ties it back to what I wanted to say in the beginning about love. Like, those two are the same in
Mm-hmm.
me, anger and love, because those of us in recovery, or those of us trying to be ready for recovery, or family members or clinicians, we are needed and necessary, and the world needs us whole. And when we can stop locating the problem inside of us and identify the problem as existing out in the world that affects me, and that eating disorders are a reasonable response to a disordered world, that's when I think recovery can happen.
I love that. I love that. And I feel like it's so important to continually name that we've internalized it, but it's not ours to carry. You know,
Mhm.
it's our responsibility because it's now here. It's now our life. It's now impacting us. Now we have to do something about it. But we don't have to. We no longer have to carry the burden of believing the stories that we've been fed.
Right.
And I think that that's a really powerful distinction that you've made. And I really appreciate you saying that, because I think, you know, if we continue to believe that we are the problem, then even if it's not necessarily the body is the problem, it's still inherently the same thing.
Mhm.
Saying I'm the problem, my body is the problem. It's still saying that it's my fault, and it's not our fault. Like you
Right.
said, it's a response.
Right. It's a reasonable response,
Yeah.
right? Like, that our coping, whatever we do, has wisdom in it. Like, I really believe in the healing impulse in whatever it is that we're trying to do to make our lives manageable. Um, and there's something else that I read, a quote from Andrea Smith, who said that you can't heal from patriarchy.
Mm.
And that landed in me so strongly in so many ways. But one of the things that I take from that is that we can do healing work, but we also have to do the work to heal and dismantle the systems of oppression that we're embedded in.
Yeah.
Right. So, as a therapist, I can do work with people in my office one-on-one, and I do, and it's valid, and it's healthy and it's appropriate and it's healing work and it's important and it's saved my life more than once as a client, but I'm sending people right back out into a system that tells them they're not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really feel like there's something about that intersection of doing our work, but then also doing the work to change the systems that are telling us that
Mm-hmm.
we need to be somehow different than who we are.
Yeah, this is a conversation that I've been having a lot in my master's program. You know, we're all budding clinicians. Our school is very social justice oriented.
Nice.
And so we're constantly exploring what's our role in the room when we live in a damaged world.
That's a great conversation. Yeah.
And it's hard because, you know, there's only so much we can do. And I think that's I think the problem is that we then are forced to look at our own limitations as humans, as clinicians. And we kind of, I think many of us are naively going into this world of wanting to solve, wanting to fix, wanting to help, right? Because of our own shadow that we don't want to look at. And so the idea of now having to face the fact that there are so many limitations to our work because of the society that we live in, I think that gets to be quite uncomfortable.
Oh, there's so many things in what you just said, actually, right? About what brings people into school, right? To become a therapist. And then also this thing about asking and looking deeply at our role and what is our role. And, you know, I think current Western psychotherapy needs to get untrained from this idea of individualism, that one-on-one work by itself is enough, because I do think we heal in relationship and in community. And I think our role as clinicians actually is also to be social change agents. And we don't get taught that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it can continue to perpetuate this individualistic notion that all you have to do is fix yourself, you know, and then somehow in some way that's going to trickle out to changing everything.
Yeah.
And there is truth to the fact that, of course, as we change, as we evolve, as we heal, we affect those around us. Of course, that's true. It's just, and there's more to that as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I wonder, what does that look like for you, Carmen? Like, how have you navigated, you know, working with people one-on-one and seeing the important effects and changes that makes? And then also, you know, stepping into an understanding of the greater role that we must play as humans.
I feel like for me, my work is not complete as a feminist therapist if I'm not also doing activism. And for the reasons that I just named and we just talked about, but also for my own internal sense of wholeness. Like if I'm going to sit and breathe in stories, like it's activism is a way for me to breathe back out, right? And kind of get out of the role of eternal witness and into a role of like, I can actually use the privilege that I have in this role and name things and make changes in ways that I can. So it's looked all different kinds of ways, I think, throughout my career. I do a lot of teaching. I've worked with teens and trained them to do activism around eating disorders and body justice in their schools and communities. Activism can show up so many ways, you know, but it's also using my voice and the power that I'm given in the role that I have to really clearly, in some ways, take my profession to task around the ways that it's done harm.
Yeah.
And hold out a different notion around what we think recovery is and what it means. Taking it back to the work that I do with eating disorders, there's a way that the field is in conversation a lot around what is recovery, and is it possible to be recovered, or are we always in recovery? Is it an accurate concept? How do we define relapse, and who gets to decide? You know, I love that question. Who gets to decide these things, and how we define recovery, and not having the concept of recovery set up as another set of standards that people have to meet or not in order to reach some ideal, which mimics the issues that bring people in the first place.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You know, like I said a little earlier, I didn't go through the medical model or through the psychotherapy model when I was navigating my disordered eating. And so I was never exposed to this idea of recovery, being in
Right.
recovery. And so when I started my master's, and there are people in my group who are in recovery for an eating disorder, it's been really interesting to just notice the difference in language and how in some ways that's helpful for people to say that. And then for other people, it puts a huge amount of pressure on themselves that if they slip, if they have a thought about body hate, or if then they feel like they relapse, and then it kind of spirals them into a lot of anxiety, and then they feel like they're bad and they have to start all over, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Yep. It is. I'm glad it's interesting to me that you're noticing that.
Yeah. And so, for you, when you're working with your clients, I would love to know, like, what do you find? Let me see. How do I want to structure this question? I guess I'm curious, like, what's the pattern? What's the thing that you see most often in the struggles that people come to you with in terms of their body, and eating, and how they feel in their lives?
Oh, it's such an interesting question and a hard one to answer in terms of what I see most often. And I'll acknowledge that my answer is just going to come from, at this point, I get a certain kind of person who comes to work with me. So people usually know that I have kind of a political and liberated take around the work that I do, and they know my work is situated in a health at every size framework. So that, that means something about who seeks me out. So that just feels important to say. But I feel like, and the answer may have changed over the 20 years that I've been a therapist also, but right now there's this theme of rebellion that shows up in people that come in. So people who know that they are really, really, really tired of being told or feeling like a diet or restriction is somehow their answer. So they know they don't want to go down that road anymore, but they have no idea how to step into a different or alternative paradigm.
Yeah.
There is often this feeling of, I don't want to be told what to do. I don't want to be, and sometimes people do want some structure, right? But there's this feeling of like, I don't want to be told what I can and can't have, about what my body needs to look like, about what isn't okay. They're really kind of wanting to find their own agency. And I really love pointing them back towards that rather than outside to some other expert or prescription or formula, or 10-step plan to follow, right? About how to heal. It's like, it's messy and complex, and that complexity is really worth making room for. But I also feel like most people have some experiences of stigma, like some experiences of feeling like they've been told that their bodies aren't okay, or the way that they eat isn't okay, or their desires or appetites aren't okay. They've had some experiences of teasing or bullying or scrutiny from people in their lives, policing around the food that they eat. And in Boulder here, there's a lot of stuff around how healthy food is, and that kind of dictates desire and ideas about what okay is, or what's supposed to needs to look like. And people want freedom, actually. People want freedom. And I think that the dieting mindset is seductive in a way that it promises freedom, but it never delivers it, and actually delivers more restraint and feeling like there's less room to move. But people want more room to move in.
Yeah, I hear that. And I, as you were talking, I was just thinking about how there's so many things that we know that we've been kind of indoctrinated and told what to do around our bodies.
Yeah.
Like do the diet, this diet. How about now it's, I think, a huge craze about the fasting, right? Like
intermittent fasting.
yes, intermittent fasting. Like that's just the coolest fucking thing, apparently, you know, because your body goes into superhuman mode if you just starve. You know, it just, all these like diets that tell you that you're going to become the superhuman, right? That you're going to be able to just now, if you can control yourself enough, you'll be this amazing person. And so the lies are so tantalizing. And
Yeah, they are.
the opposite end feels a little more murky. It's like, well, I don't know what health looks like for you. You're going to have to explore that. I don't know what the right movement is for you. You're going to have to explore that. I don't know how you can trust your body. You're going to have to explore that. And for so many of us who, you know, kind of want that tantalizing narrative because it relieves some of the pressure for us to having to figure a lot out ourselves.
That's right.
You know, it's very easy to understand why we fall into those lies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It promises superhuman, but I think what it promises is thinness, right? Really, which is what we hang everything on, or what the culture has taught us to hang everything on. And yeah, there is something inherently scary about, almost maybe dangerous for some people, about what our real appetites and desires are. You know, what our satisfaction requires. What we need to be truly nourished and satisfied. And yeah, that our bodies are where the wisdom around that lies. Our bodies are what have the information. Our bodies are fucking geniuses, right? They know exactly. And we used to know that, and we can find our way back.
Yeah.
That's what reclamation is for me too. You know, like find our way back to the wisdom that our body has.
Yeah.
Doesn't lie outside, and it doesn't lie in me as a therapist. You know, I'm really clear about that too. I just want I want to help facilitate someone coming into contact with what their truth is, period.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like.
Yeah. And so then we kind of have to talk about health at every size. You know, I had on Sarah Thompson, who now goes by SJ.
Yeah, great.
And the conversation of health at every size, I feel like is so kind of, it's it's sometimes hard for people to really get it. Again, because I think we've been so systematically taught one way, that this idea that the weight of your body isn't equivalent to your health feels a little jarring for people. So I would love to hear a little bit of your thoughts about health at every size, and what does that mean in the work that you've been doing?
Yeah. So I have been involved in the health at every size movement from before it was even named. So my personal and professional selves, as if they're different, but you know, so maybe just to say my whole life has been situated in this place. It informs so much. You know, even though I think there's some things that the model leaves out, I think it's been life altering and changing for me. And it came from fat activists doing this work before, right? The people that said, hey, we're tired of being told by the medical profession, the medical industry, that we have to lose weight to solve all of our problems, right? When we want some interventions and some non-weight based ways to take care of ourselves. And so it became a way to take back health practices from the medical industry or complex, if that makes sense. And then it grew from there to be a real social justice oriented movement that says, you know, there are things that we can do to take care of ourselves independent from weight, and that a weight-based way of viewing health is not accurate and it's harmful. And I can tell you, I've seen a whole bunch of people do a lot of unhealthy things in the name of getting healthy. Right? So that the way to improve I'll just talk about it here in a big picture way. The way to improve health is to take a look at our, there are things we can do in our individual lives that don't look like chasing the number on the scale. There's so many things I want to say now that kind of come out from that. One of the problems is that Health at Every Size has health at the beginning of its name, which has led to healthism, right? So everybody gets to decide how much they want to privilege their health. And I don't think it's a moral obligation to exercise or eat well or whatever that even means for people. And in fact, that has some ableism embedded in it. It ignores things like access and preferences, and it also ignores the reality that living in poverty and being subject to oppression and discrimination impact our health way more than how we eat and how we move, period. And so, Health at Every Size kind of got, it's just way more than a set of individual practices. And people are not more worthy or more valuable if they're more healthy. So
Well,
those feel like
just pause there, Carmen.
Yeah.
It's amazing at how we think that like we owe the world some sort of health.
Right? I know. It's true.
And, I think if we want to pursue health, that's fabulous, right? But it doesn't have to look the way our society looks. And I think the reason why our society wants this idea of health isn't because they want us to be happy. No, they want us to be quote unquote healthy because they want us to participate in capitalist notions of productivity. And the most productive members of societies are the ones that are, able to run marathons, right? Like quote unquote, like are able to like, if you can eat really healthy and do your intermittent fasting and drink your green juice, then you'll be more likely to do more work in our society. At least that's what, that's what the culture tells us. That's what the societal myth is.
It's also just so damn privileged.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like around here, if you don't, drinking green juice is a signal. It's a signal of status. It's a signal of privilege. It's a signal of, I don't like green juice, to be honest. I just, whatever, whatever.
I'm not a fan of quinoa. I really don't like quinoa. I think it's really kind of gross.
God.
Or brown rice. Can I just, I love my rice as white as possible.
Oh, so much to say about the way oh gosh. Yeah. I feel like I need to, oh man, a million thoughts are firing around.
There was a meme I saw the other day, like if you eat one additional almond, you know what I mean? Like you're going to be okay. And that's like kind of jokey, but I remember thinking about that one almond and like, if I really wanted to consume that one almond, right? Because what would that mean? How many calories and what does that look like? And I love what you said earlier that in many ways, like focusing on what we're eating on it, even if it's for this idea of health, right? It keeps us so busy and distracted.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. It keeps us very distracted. It keeps us, I just think I'm trying to think of this quote that one of my first mentors and therapists used to say, which is, how powerful is a woman going to be able to be if she's busy counting the calories in a handful of raisins?
Yeah.
This world needs political change.
Yeah.
I don't really care what size jeans I'm putting on. I care about the world that's here and changes I can be a part of making. I don't know. I also just want to be careful not to, some people are really suffering around these issues. And so I'm not wanting to make light of that too. So it's deeply painful.
Yeah.
It's deeply personal. And I think that I've seen so many people that come into my office who are feminists who feel awful about their bodies, and they feel awful about the fact that they feel awful about their bodies.
Yeah.
And so I just want to stop and name that also. It's just so much suffering and pain.
Yeah, I have a client right now who, whenever we talk about body, there's so much shame there because she's like, I know better. Consciously, I know that this isn't, I don't want to care what jean size I put on, but
I do.
I care. And I think that that can go for so many things, like whether or not it's about our body. It's like, I don't want to care if my partner does blank, 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 but I do care. And we have to
But I
get
do.
to, we have to get to that. We have to honor that I do care, that this is where you're at right now. And that's, that we can tend to, but we can't tend to it if aren't able to admit that that's where you are.
Mm-hmm. And it's where we are because it's what we've been told for so long, right? Like we've all been, most of us anyway, indoctrinated into diet culture from the very beginning. Like we don't know a world without it, really.
Yeah.
And it's not our fault that we have these biases, right? It's and just that layer of like just giving ourselves a hard time and weaponizing the knowledge that we have to just be another way to feel like we're not okay enough. It just feels so insidious, and it's just hard. It's just
Yeah.
also hard.
It is. And it's so,
Yeah.
like you said, it's so personal.
It's so,
And I think that that's what makes it so hard, is that we don't like talking about this stuff. We don't want to admit to people. I mean, no one knew that I really had issues with food because I hid it so well, because I didn't want to talk about it. There's so much shame there, because it feels out of control, and everyone else makes it look so easy. Everyone else is drinking the green juice and making it look like it's not a big deal. So why are we struggling with it so much?
it is something that, well, actually, what I would think of as disordered eating is held up as being healthy, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times when people are in a disordered eating pattern, like nobody notices because it looks like they're doing everything right.
Yeah.
And particularly if they're in a fatter body, then it definitely looks like they're doing something right. And then people get missed, right? And eating disorders go unrecognized because we don't remember, or we haven't thought about or been taught that eating disorders show up in people with bodies of all sizes.
Yes. Well, and that's one of the big struggles that I have with the DSM, particularly when we're talking about anorexia nervosa, and there has to be this BMI,
Mm-hmm.
index. And I know that you are really in the research, and I know that you are very educated on this. What is the current conversation about that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do. There are some people who are starting to be a lot louder and more vocal about the fact that that's bullshit.
Yeah.
About the fact that a fat person can have anorexia, and I'm using that word purposefully here in this context, just because I know some people might feel jarred by it, but I use it as a description of stuff we have on our bodies. There is, people in larger bodies can have anorexia, period, and they just get. But to answer your question, that conversation is starting to happen. I don't know if it'll change by the time the DSM gets revised. Who knows? But there are some people that are pushing for change. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, and that's good to hear because, I'm very much, I think, going more and more towards wanting to support this population in my work as a psychotherapist, and doing the research that I've done. It just seems like in so many ways, like I did a lot extensive research on binge eating disorder, and there are so many research articles out there that measures recovery from binge eating connected to weight and weight loss.
Oh, yeah. Don't even get me. Right. It's such bullshit.
Yeah. And there's a whole APA article about whether or not, weight loss should be a part of the treatment plan for binge eating disorder. And it's just.
No. In a word, no.
Yeah,
no.
Of course.
No.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely not.
And so it's so wild sometimes how these things are so slow to change.
It's true. It's true. It can be really slow. Change happens. You know, I don't know if it'll happen. eh, I don't know if well, I know actually all the changes I want to see aren't going to happen in my lifetime. Um, but I'm deeply devoted to doing my part to at least move it a little bit farther down the field.
Mm.
It's really disheartening that uh, these are the things that are still being taught in graduate training programs. That's another thing I'd like to make some change around.
Yeah. Well, not if you're teaching and I'm in the room. Yeah. And so if somebody comes to you, Carmen, wanting to heal from, disordered eating or wanting to kind of feel better about their bodies, but they deeply believe that weight loss must be a part of that. I'm curious, how do you navigate that?
Mm. Um, Most people come in wanting or hoping weight loss will be an outcome.
Yeah.
Um, and I know that, and I don't ask them to check that part of themselves at the door. Like I can invite it in. Most
Mm.
people who see me, though, also know the work that I do and the stances that I take.
Hmm.
So if somebody only wants weight loss or is so invested in that being what they're after, then I'm not going to be the right person to work with them because I
Hmm.
don't think you can pursue weight loss and heal from disordered eating at the same time. So I'm going to ask people to hold. The desire can be there, but the pursuit of it is going to get in the way, actually, of the healing that needs to happen. So I have conversations about all the different, or with all the different parts of them,
Yeah.
and seeing what might be possible.
Yeah, it sounds like you just really invite all parts in. And I think it's valid that there's a part of all of us that wants weight loss because that's the part of us that's been indoctrinated, And like, it's valid that it exists. It's valid that it exists no matter where we are in our recovery. It's valid that it's there. And the more that we can name it and bring it in the room, the less power it holds over us. But while we keep believing that there's something shameful about wanting that, then it's resistant to change.
It's the part of us that's been indoctrinated, but it's also the part of us that just wants to be loved.
Yeah.
We believe that's what's required,
Yes.
but it's the part that wants love and wants to
Yeah.
feel like that they belong. Um, it's all we want.
Yeah.
We want love and belonging in this world. I just don't think I just don't think that we need to lower the number on the scale in order to have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, I have a really quick question for you
Okay.
before we wrap this up. And it's kind of taking a little bit of a turn, but this is my own personal curious question.
Go
So
for it.
we'll go for it. I'm having a lot of conversations with therapists out in the field around, what does it mean to be a therapist in the modern age? Because so much I think of what we learn in grad school is kind of how to be a therapist in the 1950s.
Yeah,
And
that was a really immature giggle on my part. I'm sorry.
but particularly what I'm referring to is in the world of social media and
Oh yeah.
having a platform where you can be outspoken about your political beliefs. Anyone who sees you online or Googles you can easily find on your website, on your social, you keep nothing hidden what your political beliefs are, what your opinions are about weight loss, your feminist stance in psychotherapy.
Yep.
Um, and I think that that's something that's so beautiful and potent and necessary, but not but, and there are people in the industry who believe that, we need to be minimizing our self-disclosure
Yeah.
and minimizing our preferences and having ourselves not being able to be found online, et cetera, et cetera. So I would love to hear a little bit of your thoughts around how you navigated that, because I'm sure your education was similar to mine in that sense. Or maybe
Ooh.
not, maybe I'm making a huge ass assumption, but what did it mean for you to kind of become more visible and yeah, any other thoughts that you have about that?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. And my first thought was, this is a whole other podcast.
I know it is.
It's okay. And maybe later we have this conversation. I will say this, that I don't believe for a hot second, actually, that therapists need to be neutral. In fact, I think if we're neutral, we're dangerous. Um, I don't want to be neutral. I am not neutral around things that are doing harm in this world.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so it goes back to what I said about, I think our role is to be social change agents, and I can't do that from a neutral place. Um, I I think there are some people that really don't want to know anything about their therapists. Um, and those people aren't going to be the people who are drawn to me. People
Mhm.
who are drawn to work with me are usually people that want their therapist to show up as a relational human being in the room with authenticity and transparency and honesty and real human beingness. And that's how I'm interested in working. Um, I, in terms of online stuff, there are some things that I'm going to keep private. Not a whole lot, which isn't to say that I'm going to expose my process and my thoughts all the time and about anything, but I
Mhm.
wouldn't do that if I wasn't a therapist. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, I, hmm, I think I'm in process around this question a lot, but I am not interested in a profession or practicing in a way that doesn't let me bring forth my full humanity.
Mm.
So that's who I am. That's how I want to show up, and that's how I want to work and practice. I don't want to take over. Um, I want to be decentered. I like this idea of being decentered, but still influential.
Mhm.
And I am going to be real. I'm going to be real and relatable, and that's I think I think that's where some of the power lies. And I think
Mhm.
that's what people want from us, actually. No, I don't think they want distant um, professionals that sit there and aren't showing up fully in the room.
Yeah. Ah, thank you. I really
Yeah,
appreciate your thoughts. And yeah, I agree. It could be a whole other podcast, but I appreciate the little snippet that you offered me here. Um,
sure.
and I do endlessly appreciate, Carmen, the advocacy work you do, the one-on-one work you do, the just all of it, all the work that you do,
Thank you.
being a voice in the community. I go to, I seek you out online to see what you're saying and what you're thinking, because
Oh, thank you. Thanks
I
for that.
just, yeah, I do really appreciate the way that you break things down online and the conversations that you have. So I just am endlessly appreciative of you. Please keep going. Please keep going. We all
Oh, it's
need you. So,
meaningful for me to hear that. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I am super excited for you to enter the field. So much so. So thank you for the work that you do, for helping people in whatever forms of reclamation they're in the middle of. I just adore knowing you and knowing you're in the world. Thank you.
beautiful love fest. Thank
Hmm.
you.